Okay, so we will dive right in. Okay, so we're going to start off just with a brief history of how conservation districts came to be. So we were organized and created by federal law in response to the devastating soil erosion conditions, often referred to as the Dust Bowl. The Soil Conservation Service, the precursor to NRCS, was created in early 1930s to demonstrate the value of soil and water conservation by placing measures on privately owned land, so farms, forest lands, and branches. And in order to sort of direct and manage the soil erosion conditions on a local level, conservation districts were created. Um, in 1939, Vermont passed the Soil Conservation Act, which enabled the creation of districts here in Vermont. The first conservation district was established in 1940, the Pulteney Meadowy. We were actually just the other week sharing our original certificates of organization from the Secretary of State, which at this rate, they're about 80 years old. So it was pretty neat to see that small part of our history. And highlighted on this slide is our statute, which is within the Soil Conservation Act, which establishes the conservation districts, and it's words that we definitely still live by and abide by. And I'll just read it real quick. So the lands, water, forests, and wildlife of the state of Vermont are among the basic assets of the state, and that preservation of these lands, water, forests, and wildlife by conservation, develop, and use is necessary to protect and promote the health, safety, and general welfare of its people. Okay, so obviously we've grown quite a bit and evolved since we were established in the 1930s. Today, there are 14 conservation districts across the state. There are roughly 3,000 in the country. And we work directly with landowners, communities, and partner organizations to conserve, protect, and use Vermont's natural resources. Most districts are defined by county or watershed boundary, which you can see a little bit of in this map. So some are just within county lines, others, you can see they cross over a bit. And the role of each conservation districts, I think what makes us unique, is that we really kind of vary and they depend on local resource concerns. So while we all sort of have parallel missions, we all do operate sort of individually as we are looking to cater to our communities. But among sort of the basic duties of districts, this always includes assisting and encouraging the responsible use of our resources by providing technical assistance, implementing projects, and creating educational opportunities. We do rely on grant funding to complete our activities, state, federal, and then there's individual grants that we apply for that help support that. Something we're always sort of referred to as technical service providers or program delivery services. So those are sort of some maybe buzzy definitions that can sort of sum us up in a really, really short way. So if someone asks you what a conservation district is, those are words that you can use to describe us. But technically, we are defined as non-regulatory local units of government established under state law to promote and implement conservation programs. Each district is directed by an elected board of supervisors, and their job is to typically provide oversight in regard to financial health and organizational vision to their respective districts. Historically, board members were farmers, but over time that's evolved. And now our board members sort of represent the gamut of natural resources, which helps bring, different range of expertise into our districts. And then sort of the staff that's doing the day-to-day activities. All districts have a district manager. Others have additional staff members that have specific focuses such as agriculture or food systems, dedicated volunteers, AmeriCorps members. And we have close to 60 staff across the state, and that number is growing. So we're always excited to see that. Okay. Okay, so this slide sort of represents how districts are supported. So we have two state level organizations that support conservation districts. The Vermont Association of Conservation Districts, which is the nonprofit membership association, and they represent and support districts in helping their day-to-day activities, and they help to implement statewide programs. We have an agricultural programs manager, water quality programs manager, finance manager. So that team is continuing to grow to help implement these statewide programs. And then there's the State Natural Resources Conservation Council, which I'll just call NRCC for short. It's a state agency through which districts came to be. So their mission is to advance conservation and provide sort of a local perspective. There's representatives from each region, like Rick was saying, that are on the board, as well as we have representation from Agency of Ag, NRCS, and UVM Extension. In addition to kind of providing strategic guidance, oversight, and operational support, they help secure and allocate the funding to districts. And at the national level, we have our advocacy organization, the National Association of Conservation Districts. So they represent locally led districts through sort of grassroots advocacy, education, and partnerships. And they also are really closely aligned with NRCS, which, kind of moving into the next support system, we are lucky to have had a long-term, really unique relationship with NRCS since our creation in the Dust Bowl era. When the federal agency that became NRCS was created, it became apparent that there was a direct link needed to access landowners at the local level and to promote and implement these soil conservation practices. And so districts, again, were created to provide that link. And today, districts and VACD staff provide a range of assistance to farmers and producers to help nurture and facilitate their participation in our NRCS programs. And this is really a mutually beneficial partnership. So in addition to driving participation in the programs, NRCS offers district staff offices and computers. And we have a number of districts that operate out of USDA service centers. And then again, that's sort of an exchange for our district-led outreach activity to increase participation. Not all districts have offices within NRCS, but nonetheless, it's still sort of a very close, mutually beneficial relationship. We attend each other's meetings, share updates with one another. So it's a very valued, supportive relationship within the state. Okay. And this is just a quick snapshot of our other partners. So at the core of districts, we partner with the landowners, towns, and communities. And the other sort of members you see on those lists, they're sort of our partners in providing technical assistance or funding. But a lot of what we do is very collaborative. So a lot of the programs that we implement have a number of partners that help sort of bring these things to life. And their area of expertise also helps us expand our reach and what we're able to do. So thank you to all of them. Okay, I'll pause there for a second. Any questions before I sort of head into the next section? Okay. Okay, so this is hopefully a helpful sort of graph that represents the approaches and methodologies of districts. So we work in a variety of program areas, again, with individual landowners, communities, counties, sometimes on the state level. Mostly we focus at the local level. And we work within all phases of project development. So we're not just sort of implementing these on the ground construction or engineering designs. We're doing a lot of assessments through water quality testing, manure and soil samples, education and outreach, the planning and design, and then we sort of go into the implementation and coordination of projects. You can see in this graph, there's sort of the buckets that we focus on within for these projects. I would say we wear many hats. So we're sort of educators, technical assistance providers, project managers, and can act as intermediaries between programs and funding. So sort of the depth or breadth of what we do is extensive, which is why I think hopefully this presentation is helpful just to kind of give a more abbreviated version, or this version of what we do. Okay, so going into our sort of program sectors, and again, this, it is larger than just these four that I'm going to go over, but these are definitely the main four. So each district establishes its own programming typically, but we do have statewide programs that most districts participate in. For agricultural programs, we have our nutrient management planning, which we assist on small farms with UVM extension. And we are able to do this program through a Regional Conservation Partnership Program grant received through NRCS. We just wrapped winter classes, which I think, at least to my knowledge, was the first time it was done virtually. So I know there were some challenges or some worries going into that, but from sort of the feedback I've been hearing in my own experience, it's been really successful. And I think everyone was still glad that we were able to help assist in the building of these plans within Go Crop, kind of given our restrictions. Okay, so what's the role that we play with farmers? So it's sort of, again, extensive. We can play a lot of different roles. We can facilitate the process of finding funding and programs that would fit a landowner's needs. We can help them find financial assistance, make connections with appropriate state and federal resources. We can apply and write grants on their behalf, collect samples for testing, and then there's oversight of project implementation. So we can play a number of different roles depending on the needs of the farmer on the farm. Some of the projects, the larger projects that we implement are livestock exclusion projects, grass waterways, stream buffers, reduced tillage, just to name a few. And sort of all of what we do is with the goal of helping farmers comply with the Vermont's required agricultural practices. And I just want to take a minute to address that in addition to the districts providing the technical assistance to farmers, we have an entire dedicated staff within VACD, a technical staff that works in NRCS offices statewide that support efforts to improve stewardship of our natural resources for landowners enrolled in USDA Farm Bill programs and other sort of complementary state programs. This staff includes conservation planners, program assistants, cartographic technicians, wetland restoration technicians, and then technical specialists. And the planners and technicians, they provide assistance to farmers and landowners to prepare the necessary assessments and information for the development of nutrient management plans. So they definitely have a big role in that process. They also provide other planning, implementation, and contract management to farms seeking financial assistance from USDA programs or the state to meet the goals of Vermont's Clean Water Initiative associated with required agricultural practices. And just to add some color to all of what I just said, I just wanted to share sort of a brief example of one of the projects that was done in the last 2 years that showed sort of the gamut of the different phases of a project and has a really great success story. This one came out of Orleans County, and Emily, if you want to add anything to this when I'm done, feel free to. But Morin Farm, which is in the Stearns Brook watershed, they sought to place a permanent conservation easement on their land. And as part of that easement, the farmer agreed to implement or address all of Vermont's required agricultural practices. But prior to doing this, they sort of wanted to do some testing to see how the best management practices that they already had implemented, sort of how they were doing. So water samples were collected over a 3-year period, which showed elevated levels of phosphorus in a waterway that ran through the farm. And so following this discovery, the farm implemented a new barnyard for heavy use area adjacent to the waterway, exclusion fencing, alternate watering, stream crossing, and laneway projects. Most of this was over coordinated and helped developed with Orleans County. And so once all those projects were implemented, water sampling was taken after, and it showed an 85% reduction in phosphorus levels, which is amazing. That's a huge number. And it's sort of just a testament to what implementing best management practices on a farm, what it can do. Okay, moving on to the next section. Any questions here? Okay. So next we have our education and outreach. So this is sort of almost part of every program that districts develop. We work with communities, landowners, towns, and students and watershed groups to increase education and offer training opportunities, obviously, around Vermont's natural resources. And the category focus has sort of a pretty wide range. So we have like our annual events like the Envirothon, workshops with landowners and farmers, public education. This past year, given the restrictions, there was a ton of webinars that were hosted, and topics range from invasive species removal, social networking for farmers, water quality in Lake Champlain, Christmas tree growing, dam safety. So, and those are just sort of naming just literally a few of all the topics. And I think, in my opinion, this is where districts, or I personally, sort of have the most fun because you can get a little bit creative. We've had a few districts host art shows in the past that work with local artists to sort of reflect what farms are doing across the state to improve water quality and soil health. And it's sort of meant to be this sort of reflective art show on what farmers are doing and sort of incentivize the public to buy local, and that we have a lot to be sort of thankful for our farmers for. There's a little picture here. It says, "Thank our farmers for the view," which was sort of an initiative led by Lamoille County NRCD that just has people stop, and when they're in leaf peeping, they actually know what they're looking at. Yeah, okay. So next up, we have our natural resources restoration and conservation. So we coordinate with partners to protect and restore waterways, wetlands, and again, natural resources across the state. And these projects really depend on the local needs of each district, areas of interest, expertise of the staff, and of course, support from our partners. We have our signature Trees for Streams program, which allows districts to plant woody buffers along waterways. And I think with one grant, there's a few that provides funding for this program, but with one grant, we saw over 14 acres of trees planted over a 2-year period, led by districts. So there's been a ton of trees planted, which is awesome. And their districts are pretty knee deep in tree planting season right now, so a lot of time out in the field. We do invasive species education with the help of boat launch stewards, stream bank and wetland restoration, dam removals. We just received over $1 million of funding from NRCS RCPP program that's going to allow districts to focus on stream bank restoration and stream bank restoration and protection, and the improvement of aquatic organism passaging. So very excited about that. A lot of really great projects will be sort of being implemented over the next couple of years, thanks to that. Okay, so stormwater remediation. So we mostly work with towns and of course private landowners to implement stormwater practices. So anywhere from rain gardens, construction of sediment basins, restoring natural infiltration systems, anything that's going to reduce the causes of erosion. In addition to implementing these practices, we do aid in the assessment of stormwater practices. So you may see that a lot of towns have stormwater master plans that districts can help or have bring to life. And that helps to prioritize what stormwater practices are going to have the greatest impact on water quality and soil health. And mitigation can occur at the public and private level. And there's really been a focus lately on green stormwater practices. So a shift from sort of that hard armored, antiquated style to more natural stabilization techniques through planting native species and whatnot. So some of the photos that you're looking here in the top right-hand corner was a rain garden that Rutland County built on a school in Rutland County. In addition, they did rain gardens, they did a new infiltration trench. And the great thing about implementing these practices on school grounds is that it kind of creates this sort of legacy of teaching, like a live classroom. The students can engage in it, help with the upkeep of it, and it sort of serves as a sort of a great sort of living classroom, if you will. And the other picture, the one you see of the lake, the larger one, that was a project recently completed by Essex County. This was in Maidstone Lake, where they were doing a lot of education and outreach. And this one landowner had sort of these falling down railroad ties, which is sort of this wooden wall, and it was just sort of deteriorating into the lake, and runoff, nutrient and sediment runoff was just basically being funneled. So they replaced it with softscape by bioengineering techniques, which uses all natural biodegradable materials. They planted a bunch of native species, and it's a lot prettier to look at. And once like all those roots kind of once all the plants take root, they're going to have sort of a beautiful shoreline that's going to be a much bigger improvement for water quality. Okay, so outside of sort of doing these projects within those categories that I just discussed, we also participate in a range of planning and prioritization projects that help influence conservation on the national, state, and local level. We can have an impact on at the basin level through our engagement and work with the tactical basin plans managed by Vermont DEC. We help to coordinate and participate in local working groups through NRCS. And we're able to sort of participate in this local discussion about natural resource concerns and priorities, which is vital to the USDA's approval and allocation of Farm Bill programs. And so this is just a list of some groups or coalitions that districts or VACD are members of. Okay, and then why we're here today is because of our role in the Vermont Agricultural Water Quality Partnership. So I think most of you probably know what it is, but just as a refresh, it's a coalition of state and federal organizations dedicated to improving water quality across agricultural lands. And it creates an environment or a platform for coordinated efforts across a number of organizations, so we can really tailor our technical and financial assistance to our farming community. And we leverage a lot of unique resources, funding mechanisms, and technical assistance and outreach techniques. And it's very collaborative, and it brings experiences like this for us to sort of share and learn from one another. In addition to that, conservation districts will be playing a role, and I'm going to throw it over to Allie. She's going to discuss a little bit about the role districts will play as regional coordinators.
Thanks, Molly.
Oh, Allie, we can't hear you, or I can't. Oh, can anyone else hear her?
Can you guys still hear me?
Now I can. I wasn't able to before when you first started.
Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna turn off my video and I hope that helps. If not, I'll type it into the chat. Sorry about that. So the partnership identified a need to staff regional coordinators to bring together the technical and financial staff across the state, and we've broken the regions out of the state of Vermont into 6 regions. So there's northwest, northeast, there's a couple central, there's like Winooski and Otter Creek, southeast, southwest, and we are funding district staff as regional coordinators to convene the partnership staff to come together to have a refresher about the partnership, you know, get to know new staff, get connected with staff that have been here and the work that's already going on, learn about priorities, go over you know, the tools that we have available to us for collaboration, like you know, the MOUs, so that we can all communicate, you know, different mapping tools or partner database, that sort of thing, and really talk about what makes their region unique and the water quality challenges that they face across the different sectors, and then kind of diving in on where there are specific projects for collaboration or areas where maybe there's you know, there's water quality testing that shows that there's you know, high loading in this area. How can we all come together to strategically and efficiently make some water quality improvements? So that's kind of a high level overview. So like I said, there's regional coordinators doing work in the 6 regions of the state, and you can expect in the next 6 months that they'll be reaching out to you and having a meeting, and that this work will be ongoing. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and there's a number of coordinators on the call, so if they want to chime in, I welcome that. Thanks.
Thanks, Allie. Okay, we're getting to the very end, so if there's any questions, you'll be able to ask them in just a minute. This slide just sort of gives an overview of our total budget for the fiscal year 2020 for VACD and districts. Just shows sort of a snapshot of how we are funded. And then the pie chart on the right is basically how staff within districts, sort of their focus, the support within program focus. So you can see that most districts spend a majority of time within agriculture. And it was sort of interesting as we built this chart and got the feedback from the districts, we noticed that sort of the staff support aligned really well with water quality targets outlined in TMDLs. And so we sort of learned that we're ultimately focusing our resources in sectors that have the ability or are making the biggest impact on water quality. So it was sort of just an interesting tidbit. In fiscal year 2020, over 140 grants were written to try to get funding. So a lot of that is thanks to the hard work of districts who chug out grants on the regular. So yeah. And then this last slide, just sort of a snapshot of some of the, I think, more impressive numbers of what districts are completing. Over 170 conservation practices and projects were installed in fiscal year 2020, over 30,000 native trees, over 2,000 water, soil, and manure samples, which aid in conservation planning, 5,000 landowners, farms, and community members received technical assistance through our programs. So yeah, I will also throw in the chat once I exit out of my presentation, the link to our annual report. If you haven't seen it, it sort of breaks down each sector by numbers as well. And it has a lot more success stories and examples of the work that we're doing. So that's also a really valuable resource to learn a little bit more about districts. Okay, that is a wrap. Obviously, I will open the chat in a minute to see what sort of questions you all have. In a way, for any of you who are interested in working with conservation districts, probably the easiest thing to do is to reach out to the district within the region you're looking to work in. You can go to the VACD website to find all the contact information, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. We share a lot of stories and updates, upcoming webinars, success stories through that. And then we'll be doing an external newsletter to partners that will be developed within the next month to share just a little bit more about sort of the projects that we're doing, some highlights. So it's just a good form of communication that will be sent directly to your inboxes. Okay. Am I out of my slides?
Thanks, Molly. I'm still seeing your screen.
Oh, yes, there you go, stop share.
Awesome, thank you so much. That was really excellent. Does anybody have questions for Molly?
And if there aren't any questions, if anyone wants to share maybe how they've collaborated with conservation districts in the past, any sort of success stories that you may have, the way a conservation districts has helped sort of extend the reach of a project that you're doing. So yeah, it can be questions or just sort of general sharing and storytelling, not to put anyone on the spot.
Molly, this is Mary Beth Whitten. I'd like to hear a little bit more about what the expected outcomes of the regional meetings should be or would be, or what is expected. I mean, I understand it's, a gathering of all of our partners, to come together, but what's our expected outcomes? Or do we have, is that up to each region?
Are you referring to the NRCS local working group meetings?
No, I help run those. No, these regional coordinators that VACD now has, Northwest, East, Northeast, 2 in the Central, those. I just want more of what I've been asked by my region's person, regional coordinator or whatever you call her, to help run this meeting. And I really don't know what we're supposed to be doing or the outcome of these meetings.
Yeah, I can talk about that a little bit. I was just pulling up one of the agreements with the regional coordinators to kind of go over what you can expect. I think each region is certainly unique in, the specific challenges that it faces. But so like your specific outcomes of where you're going to target your effort for financial and technical assistance or that sort of thing may vary. But at the meetings, we anticipate that, the first meeting we're going to gather together, as you said, the coordinators really are to serve as ambassadors to the partnership. So they're going to support the staff within the region by sharing information about the partnership, by getting everybody on the same page regarding the purpose of the partnership and encouraging participation in these meetings. We're going to go over, I'll provide a training about the partnership. Like I said, we'll go over the MOUs and the MOUs so that everybody can be on the same page and comfortable about like how can we share information when we're working on a farm, so that we have that base level understanding of everybody's different, how we can plug in together and not have concerns of, oh, I can't talk to you or that sort of thing. So like that first part of that first meeting is going to be getting everybody on the same page to know who everybody is and what they do, what the partnership is and the point of it, and start talking about how we can work together, and then diving into specifics about that region. And so these meetings are going to happen twice a year. Some regions, they may be having just 2 big group meetings a year. Others, they're going to maybe break out smaller groups and have them more frequently. Each region's a little bit unique depending on its needs. But the meetings are going to be used not only to talk about
Hey, Allie, we lost you.
water quality improvements, but they'll also be used to elicit local staff recommendations for regarding ag water quality and habitat protection policies and programs that will then, the regional coordinators are going to be sharing this information with the Vermont Ag Water Quality Partnership leadership, the steering committee. And certainly we expect that these regional coordination meetings are going to coincide with other regional water quality meetings that are already going on and doing important work, like the local working groups, the tactical basin planning meetings, the strategic watershed meetings. And so we expect that these regional coordination meetings are going to build off of that important work that's already happening, make it cohesive, and maybe have a unique focus so that there isn't just a duplication. This isn't just one more meeting. So does that give a little bit more clear understanding? We also are working on doing an announcement about the regional coordinators and the work that they're going to be doing that we'll be distributing in the Vermont Ag Water Quality Partnership listserv, where you get your newsletter and the reminders about the webinars and stuff. So we hope that that will help clarify and to do a press release for the public as well. Is that helpful?
That's great. I appreciate that.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Yeah, this is Dan from Lamoille County Conservation District, and I guess my question is kind of the other side of the group there, and I've been tasked with convening a local led work group in Lamoille County, and am interested in how other folks have gone about doing that. It seems like there hasn't been much of one in Lamoille County thus far, and just looking for some pointers. And that's exciting to hear that there's folks on the call who, convene theirs in their region. So
yeah, Dan, I'd be happy to talk to you about that at some point soon.
great, thanks, Sarah.
I haven't actually, as my own district, we didn't have one this past year because of COVID. So it was sort of more of an email about if we wanted to keep the priorities the same. So I haven't had to lead one or participate in one yet. So yeah, if you obviously want to reach out to Sarah, if anyone wants to share maybe what their experience has been briefly, feel free to.
Yeah, this is Rick here at Winooski. We've done, I would say, almost as a, shall we say, superficial job, but we haven't, in the last several years, we haven't had a local work group that's called that. But again, just relying on what we do know about the Winooski District area resources, the areas of concern, and then seeking input from people using our website, contacting other people in the area that have worked with us in the past for their opinions, that sort of thing. So it's just, it is something that really needs to be done. to help NRCS. But, you know, fortunately, things don't change all that dramatically from one year to the next. So I think it's okay that we can go a number of years without having a local work group each and every year.
Thank Rick. That's helpful.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't sure if it was ongoing throughout the year or if it was. It's nice to hear. It sounds like it's a one time a year sort of thing, convening a group of people. And I certainly think that the Vermont Ag Water Quality Regional Coordination will have a role to have a voice at the table, I think. So thank you.
Yeah, Dan, let me just jump in again. This is Rick. You know, DEC does a fair amount of monitoring, water quality monitoring, biological monitoring, chemical monitoring, physical monitoring. So every other year, DEC issues not only the state of the state's water quality report, which is section 305B report, talks about surface water and groundwater, what's going on throughout the state of Vermont. But along with that, DEC also publishes the list of impaired waters and the list of other waters. I think there are 4 or 5 other lists in addition to the impaired waters. So that is probably the best way to know for waters in any district area what's considered to be impaired, not meeting water quality standards, and what are other waters that are trending or moving in the less than desirable direction. So the information from a water quality standpoint, particularly surface water quality, is out there and is updated regularly every 2 years by the state.
So I'll just add to the local work group question, and the fact that Vermont NRCS, especially in the last couple of years, due to circumstances beyond our control, did not require a local work group meeting, but also sort of recommended a survey to be sent out. And I would give Rick's board a kudos here. The Winooski Conservation District sent that out to their listserv of some sort and got over 60 responses, and actually then tallied those responses. And then as a group, we were able to focus our answers and give that as sort of the local work groups concentrations that NRCS needs to help formulate some of those questions in the ranking of all our applicants. So I would, even though
There she is.
Did we lose her?
yeah, sorry, my internet keeps going in and out, guys. I don't have very good service at the moment. Sorry about that.
Consolidated Communications, let me guess.
No, believe it or not, I'm operating on a Verizon hotspot because I live in the Adirondacks and have no internet whatsoever.
Okay, well, thank you. Molly, did you?
Sorry, Allie, you got cut off. I think you were probably wrapping it up. Obviously, if there's Allie is recording this, so I'm sure she can share the link to that. And if there's any questions, feel free to email me, or like I said, if you have interest interest in partnering with conservation districts or sort of learn more about what's being done in a specific region, it's best to contact your local district. They are incredibly great and knowledgeable, and would be happy to connect with you.
All right, and one last thing, thank you everybody so much for joining us today. And if you could please complete the survey evaluation that I put in the chat, that would be greatly appreciated. And I hope you all get out and enjoy the beautiful weather today.